Jamie Buturff is up next. He's from Sedona, Arizona. He's had a long background in the construction industry. About 18 months ago, he started researching the Rodin coils and came up with a lot of really amazing insights and results very quickly. As a lot of people have noticed throughout the history of all the Tesla research, going really all the way back to Tesla himself, there have always been biological effects whenever you start doing something with these energies. And so it was on a spiritual journey, basically, and found out about this and felt that it fit right into that journey. So here's Jamie Buturff.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you. Well, hey, everybody. It's great to be back in TeslaTech. For those of you who don't remember me from last year, Marco and I came in on a whim. We had no slot whatsoever. We just packed up stuff and drove out here hoping maybe we can get in and show some things. It's great to see some old friends from last year, and it's also fantastic to meet some new ones. But this year, I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm not going to be showing you any kind of a magnetic monopole generator or rotor. Yeah, you guys remember that one? That was interesting, wasn't it? Or a motor generator. I'm going to be talking something a little different. This talk is going to be about something that happened to me probably, I don't know, maybe first of the year, January, late January, early February, where I had a dream. It woke me up at 3:30 in the morning, and it was a very powerful dream. I can't really tell you the aspects or the details of the dream, but it made me rush to my computer and start doing research on using the coil for healing. And I started to do research in music and understanding what music and
I'm working on it right now. Looks like somebody tripped over the cables. Keep talking.
Hello, testing 1, 2. Did I get it? Okay. So I started to do research in music and understanding what is the fundamental principle of matter, because that was really the ultimate goal of energy. When I started working in this field 18 months ago, and I had to really try to understand what is the fundamental principle of matter, or what is energy, and why do we need it? And we need energy to move somewhere. We need energy to build a house. We need energy to essentially rearrange matter in space-time. And that's when it really came it really hit me that that's what we need energy for, primarily, is to rearrange matter in space-time. And it also goes with healing. If you have an ailment in the body, it's about rearranging the matter in your body to erase the ailment, to make it more in balance, to cure it. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about in this talk today, I got basically 3 aspects. And of course, the first one is movement. The second one is matter or energy, but I really consider movement, matter or energy primarily the same thing, but I want to separate it into 2 so we don't get confused about what we're trying to talk about, because I'm going to be basically kind of giving you some different understanding, a different way of looking at what is matter, what is movement, what is energy. And then, of course, thirdly, I'm going to be showing some of the devices that I have for that. And then I'll show a video of one of the testimonies at the end. Okay, so one of the first things I want to talk about is frequency, interval, and rhythm. And we all understand that frequency is measured in hertz, and it's on a cycles per second, okay? And this is basically a very simple diagram of what we're all showed of what is a sine wave and what is frequency, how to measure frequency. But once you see that and understand what I'm going to be talking about, I want you to immediately forget it and look at it from a standpoint of standing wave nodes. I'm not going to go into this particular graphic in detail right now. I will later, but as I go through this presentation, I want you to keep in mind what this is a soundboard with beads on it, and it's pulsed at a particular frequency, and it causes these, I call them vortexes. You don't see the beads spinning, but it is a vortex, and it is a harmonic node that causes this phenomenon that we see here. So sound, according to Edward Casey, would be the medicine of the future. According to Goethe, architecture is crystallized music. So we're going to get into a couple of aspects of architecture as crystallized music, but it's also the architecture of our body, not just a building that we build, but it's also what is the architecture of the body, and what is the architecture of the cells of our body, and what is the architecture of an atom. Today, and I mentioned music earlier, today everybody in the world primarily, the standard concert pitch tuning is A440 hertz, okay? This came about in the United States in 1917. The American Federation of Musicians first adopted the A440 standard. Now in 1917, it really wasn't a good era for the United States because this 4 years prior to that, we enacted the Federal Reserve Act. So we all know how we feel about that. So there wasn't a whole lot of good things going on. We had World War I, everything was going on. So the American Federation of Music adopted this, but it really wasn't until the late 1930s, that one of the biggest proponents of the A440 tuning was a Nazi. This knucklehead. Now, he was the biggest proponent of the A440. He wanted to get all the rest of the world into tuning all of our instruments, concert pitch, piano, stringed instruments, everything, to the A440 standard. Now, why would we want to do anything this guy wanted us to do? Huh? I mean, well, I guess it precedes him, so we don't really need to go into that. But anyway, to me, it didn't really make any sense. Why would we want to do that? Okay, at the time, the rest of the world actually didn't adopt the 440 standard until the late 50s, mid-50s. But this was to the protest of 20,000 French musicians who unanimously voted for the standard concert pitch to be A equals 432. Now, what that means is on a piano, above middle C, the A above middle C would be tuned to A 432 hertz, and the rest of the signatures, the rest of the notes would be tuned around that. So it's basically the standard concert pitch, the standard tuning. Also, that would be middle C would be 256, but they term it in both, but typically A is 432, that's the standard, that would have been the standard, like A equals 440. Now, 432 hertz is found all over ancient America, all over the ancient world, from Sumeria, Egypt, Asia. These are instruments that have been uncovered in archaeological sites, and they have been determined that these instruments have been predominantly tuned to the A432. Now, understanding the A432, and what I'm going to be talking about next is understanding what interval is. I like using Pythagorean tuning or Pythagorean theory because obviously we still mention his name today. He's one of the biggest mathematicians, one of the biggest proponents of a lot of the things that we understand and know and use, still to this day. So if you look on the left, you'll see the ratio. Okay, let's start in the middle. Now I got this off the internet somewhere, so I don't have the unison or the one-to-one as the A. It's just below it, but it doesn't really matter because hello. Because you can put any one of these notes in here and then get the tuning around it. Okay, so just for this example, the unison note, which is 1-to-1, all right, and over here is the decimal equivalent of the ratios that are here. So all you can do is use the decimal equivalent to multiply by the 432. So the unison 1 times 432 is 432. So these are all the ratios of all the notes in Pythagorean tuning, and you can see there's the perfect fifth, major second, major sixth, major third, and then on up. The minors go up and the majors pretty much go down. Now, I'm not really going to get into a whole lot of music theory. I just want to give you just the basics for those. Any musicians in here? Anybody play a musical instrument? Okay. Well, good. This is going to be interesting for you guys as well, or for most of you anyway. So anyway, this is where I first got the idea for the 432 and the proper tuning or the proper interval. Now, I'll get more into that later. I just wanted to show you this first of all. Now, we take that Pythagorean tuning, we put 432 in the middle. What we have here is a snapshot of, yes?
I'm going to beg your grace. I'm going to switch a cable for a moment here. We're going to just, I just want to come off while you're talking. We'll just quick plugging, it'll be just a second. Okay. 3, 2, okay, test.
Testing 1, 2.
Okay, test again.
Testing 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2, test. Okay, go ahead.
Testing 1, 2. Test.
Do we have sound on that?
Testing 1, 2.
You did it. Sound over there?
Can you guys hear me?
From your mic.
Is that okay? Okay. No. Who said no? Okay. Well, can the most of you hear me? Okay. All right. All right. So what we have here is just a cutaway or just a section of our keyboard that we use today. Here's middle C, which is 256 hertz. All right, and here would be the A above middle C, 432 hertz, and then we got 512. So basically an octave is doubling the 256. We got 256 and we double, we get the 512. So that's what an octave is. It's basically you're doubling the notes as you go up. One of the interesting things I discovered in doing this with the 432 is the ratio between 432 and 256 is 1.6875 or 27 to 16, okay? Now if we go back, we'll see the 27 to 16 is right there, okay, which is a major sixth on the scale. The ratio between 512, which is the octave above middle C, and the 432 is 1.851 or 32 to 27, okay? So we can see 32 to 27 is here, which is a minor third. All right, you see the ratios here, 27 to 16, and then see how the 16 doubles, and then you get 32, then the 27 stays the same. So now we take it and look at it from a Marco Rodin perspective. What we have here is the 27 to 16 is a major sixth. All right, the 432 is a 9, which is 4 plus 3 plus 2 is 9. And then we have the 32 to 27, which is a minor third. So we get the 6, 3, and the 9, which I thought was pretty interesting. Okay. Now, I believe I couldn't really find the original source where I got this. This is the most harmonic numbers. I thought it was produced by Stanford University, but it might have been Berkeley. I can't remember for sure. So if I'm wrong, some of you correct me if you've seen this. But basically, this is a published work by this university. And what they basically did is really a simple matrix of numbers. You just start with 1, and you double it, and you go this way. You start with 1 again, and you triple it, and you go this way. And then you have the resulting products that lay in the matrix. Okay, here you see here 432 lies, which is the 27 times 16. 27 times 16 is 432. Here you've got the 256, which is the 256 and the 512, which is the C scale if you use 432 as the foundation. And I had this blue box over here outlined because I wanted to just briefly mention this. If you take 432 and square it, you get 186,624, which is like less than 1% being accurate of the accepted speed of light. Okay, so 432 is, we're going to get a lot more into that in a minute. All right, so here's the funny VW symbol Marco talks about, the mathematical fingerprint of God, and of course you can see the 3 and the 6, how they alternate around the 9. I'll probably get back to that in just a second. One of the other things I researched and I realized about the 432 and the Rodin geometry was this is a keyboard, and all the black numbers that you see here are all the frequency in hertz for that particular note, using the most harmonic numbers in nature. Okay, the black keys have their key signatures up here, white keys have theirs down here. And what I did was, all the green that you see is all the frequency of C. Okay, they're all C notes. And if I took the frequency of C, which is 64, add the 6 and the 4 together to get the 1, all right, I did the same thing down here. Down here I get 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, right? Just like you see on Marco's BMW signal. Now, when I first saw that, I was like, this is phenomenal, okay? This is incredible. But then I got to realizing, well, of course, it's an octave. You're doubling it each time. You're always going to have that. It's not that big of a deal. But one of the things I did notice is I put the 1 step and the 4, 2, 8, and the 5 on the bass line here. I alternated the 6 and the 3s are in the middle, and then, of course, the 9s on the white notes are across the top. And one of the things I want to do, I actually just now discovered this, or put this together on here not even a week ago. But I thought it was pretty interesting to try and figure out, I'm just trying to understand, putting together Marco's stuff, because when I first encountered Marco's work, I was blown away. I sat all day on a Saturday and watched all of his videos to try to understand where he was coming from, and I found one video on YouTube that showed me how to build a coil, and it just captivated me ever since. So I'm really trying to find the relationship in music with Marco's work with this slide here. Now, when I first had my dream at the beginning of the year, this is one of the first things that came to me. Now, this is a drawing that I actually did in AutoCAD because I wanted to get a feel for the geometry of the Sri Yantra. And this is where I originally came across the 432 and started researching what the meaning of the 432 through this ancient symbol, which comes from the Temple of Borobudur in Java. And this is actually the pyramid at Mount Meru. This is one of the oldest known sites in the world that actually has the Sri Yantra that we know of. Now, one of the most significant things about the Sri Yantra is, for those of you who don't know, we're getting a little esoteric, but the Sri Yantra is supposedly the sound. It is the Om. And the Om is the sound that was brought in by the gods that is actually the sound of creation. It is what creates matter. It is what creates everything, is this sound of the Om. And what we're looking at here, this is a Tibetan monk chanting the Om into a tonograph, which is kind of along the same lines of the cymatics and some of the other things where you've seen, this particular one here, there's a plate, a steel plate with there's sand spread on it, and a Tibetan monk, when he properly chants the word Om or the tone of Om, it creates the Sri Yantra in the sand. So the sound that he's creating is actually creating a geometric pattern in the sand, which I thought was incredible, that we'd be able to do that. Knowing that the Sri Yantra is the symbol for the life or the breath of all creation. It is what brings creation into existence. So at this site, there are 72 stupas, which are these things that you see here, and there's 432 Buddha statues. Now, I thought that was interesting. Okay, so I did some little bit of math and started to do some calculation on that. If you do the 432 divided by 72, you get 6, which is the root of our base 60 counting system for time, and it's also the 6 doubling circuits of Randy Powell's vortex-based math model. All right, so we have the 60 seconds and the 60 minutes all around the 6, and I also decided, okay, what is 432 times 72, which is 31,104, and there's the 31,104 down there, which is in the most harmonic numbers, but you see you also got the 6, the 72, and the 432 in there. And so next, okay, we have the 6. So obviously the ancients were going to tell us something about the 432, the 72, then the 6. The 6 is obviously a pretty important number. Mathematicians would say that 6 is the first perfect number because it's 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, and 1 times 2 times 3 equals 6. And we also know this infamous number, the number of the beast, right? The number of man, 666. Well, what if he was actually trying to tell us something? Not some evil, beast somewhere out there, but what if they were trying to give us a more deeper meaning? Because if you take 6 cubed, or 6 times 6 times 6, you get 216, which is half of 432, or an octave below the 432, okay? Which is seen here. So the 216 is half of that. I'm going to get into a bunch of these relationships from our planet's ancient sites and so forth a little bit later on. But I wanted to let you know, there used to be a keyboard here. I don't know why it just disappeared, but that's basically showing here that 216 is below the 432. Or 12 semitones below, or we would call 6 whole tones below the 432. This next section of my presentation is going to be talking about the work of Vernon Jenkins. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard about Vernon Jenkins before. Anybody? Raise your hand. Vernon Jenkins, the work. He talks about, he takes the number system of Hebrew, the original book of Genesis, and he takes the mathematical equivalent, because in Hebrew, they don't use the number system like we do. They don't use the Arabic numeral system. They use each individual letter or a series of letters to make up their number system. So what he does here is he takes 216 units. They actually did this in my graphics program just so I know he was correct, and actually built these tiny little cubes, and I replicated it, copy, paste, 216 times. And then I put it all together in my graphics program just to make sure that he was accurate in what he was doing. And sure enough, there are exactly 216 cubes or units in this outline triangle. Okay. So what Vernon Jenkins first did, he took in the beginning, the actual literal translation for God, or Elohim, but it's really kind of the same thing, I guess, as far as we're concerned. But in the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. Okay, this is the first verse of Genesis. All right, this one here, there isn't no literal translation, but it's still in there, and the numbers need to be important. So what Vernon Jenkins did is took the first verse of the Bible, all right, added up, put their numerical value below them, and then he came up with a number of 2701. In that 216 outline triangle, 2,701 cubes will fit perfectly within it, okay? So now we're starting to get a structure here. We're starting to understand not just the terminology or the words in the first two verses of Genesis, which is the creation geometries, is what they're called, but we're starting to see exactly something starting to emerge from the words, from the literature, and it's all based on numbers. Second thing he did was took "and the earth," all right, 407, 296 equals 703, and a 703 unit perfect triangle fits perfectly within that 216 outline triangle. And of course, the resultant yellow triangles are 666 units each. I counted them, I know. All right, and then we go on to some more words. Okay, there's the asterisk, the heaven and the earth, and the earth. So basically, this is the end of Genesis 1 and the beginning of Genesis 2, or 1, 2. And you take the numbers again, and you get 1801. All right, 1801 produces this beautiful hexagon inset within the original 216 outline triangle. And one of the interesting things is the perimeter, or each side has 25 units. So there's 25 units on each side. The perimeter has a total of 144 units, and there are 49 rows, which makes all of those numbers, they're all perfect squares of each other. They're all perfect squares. Next was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. All right, Vernon Jenkins did the same thing, which is 1875, or 625 times 3. And you get this pattern, all within the same 216. And the spirit of Elohim moved gently on the face of the waters, did the same thing, came up with this number here, 37 times 37. And you get a beautiful rhombus inset within that 216 unit triangle. Now what, one of the interesting things about this discovery for me was being a spiritual teacher, or being a person of spirit. Well, I guess I should kind of back up a little bit. For the last 15 years, I've been doing spiritual work. I started with a book called Hermetics, Initiation into Hermetics, and I had a profound spiritual awakening about 15 years or so. I opened up my heart chakra, and it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. And ever since then, like Marco and like Randy, our spiritual experiences have been guiding us towards better technology, better understanding of how to make this planet a better place to live. So when I came across or studied this and understood that the 216 was pivotal in the understanding of matter, or understanding of how creation came into existence, because Pythagoras said that man is 2 octaves away from God. Now, if we take the 216, which is what I've been focusing on here in Vernon Jenkins' work, as the creation geometry, well, an octave above that is the 432. We have 432 Buddha statues. The Buddha was the Christ-like. It was the Christ image. It was all something that the 432 is something that we're all supposed to strive for, to get out of the 216, get out of the 666, get out of the beast, because we are that. Our egos are that. We're trying to get to a more Buddhist conscious, a more Christ-like conscious. So, of course, then the A64 would be the God conscious. But it really started to make sense to me. And another thing that really stood out was the fact that God moved upon the face of the water. Now, understanding the significance of water, it could be emotion. Water could be the conscious, the membrane between the conscious and the subconscious. Now, why would God move upon the face of the water? Why would that be in the first part of Genesis and understanding creation? I mean, basically, these are talking about how creation came into existence. And I told you at the beginning, I needed to understand what the fundamental principle of matter was. So if God moved upon the face of the waters, what's going to happen? You're going to create a ripple, right? You're going to create some kind of interference pattern, okay? You're going to get waves upon waves that are going to create matter. That's how matter comes into existence, through motion, through emotion, all right, through the water, through God moving upon the face of the waters. That's my take on it anyway. And this is a beautiful crop circle that I saw. It depicts the interference pattern of anything beautifully, light. Well, here, I'll just take this example here. This is a guy that, this is a Harvard physicist, Eric Heller, who created this computer rendering. And what it is, it depicts, it's a computer rendition, and it depicts the interaction of 9 plane waves, all right, or expanding sets of ripples. So what would happen if you dropped 9 stones in a pond? What would the interaction of those ripples look like? And you get this beautiful structure, this interference pattern. And they call it a quasi-crystal because it has ordered structure, but it doesn't actually repeat itself exactly. It's off just a little bit everywhere. It's just off just a tad, and that's important a little bit later on in the presentation. Okay, now we're going to get into some of the interesting things that I've discovered based on the 432. All right, the diameter of the moon is 2,160 miles. That's 432, half of 432. The diameter of the sun is 864,000 miles, which is 432, or 432,000 times 2. The precession of the equinoxes, which is 25,920 years, or 432 times 60. 12 hours equals 720 minutes, or 60 times 12, or 43,200 seconds. A healthy athletic adult at rest has an average heartbeat of 60 beats per minute, which gives us 60 times 60 minutes in an hour times 24 hours a day, which is 86,400 beats per day, which is 43,200 times 2. The height and perimeter of the Great Pyramid has a ratio of 43,200 to the radius and circumference of the Earth. The original height of the Great Pyramid, if the capstone were replaced, was 481,000.4 feet. Now, before I go further, I wanted to clarify what the Egyptian inch and the English inch was, which are 0.0001 from being different from one another. And they changed it. There's some confusing about when all that had taken place. So when I talk about the speed of light, miles per second, and so forth, the Egyptian inch and the mile, they were very closely related, but they were just off just a little bit. So now, if we take the 481.4 times 43,200, you get 3938.685 miles, which is close to the actual polar radius of the Earth, which is measured to be 3949 miles. Whoops. That must have been my shopping list. I don't know how that got in there. If you multiply the perimeter of the Great Pyramid all the way around its base, which is 3,223 feet, by 43,200, you end up with 24,734.94 feet, which is less than 1% margin of error of the measured circumference of the Earth. Okay, Stonehenge. Now, when they built Stonehenge, we didn't have Latin long. They didn't come along until later. But now that we know the grid system, we take 51 degrees times 10 minutes times 42, all these things here, seconds north latitude, and you multiply them together, you get 21,600, which is a multiple of the 432. The speed of sound in granite is 12,960 feet per second, or 4320 times 3. The harmonic sixth of the 432 is also 720 hertz, which we got the 72 stupas. Wilson Golf. Now, you probably think maybe that got in there by accident. But in my research, I came across something that was interesting. These scientists, these engineers at Wilson Golf decided that they wanted to figure out what would be the precise number of dimples in a golf ball, which are those little thingies there, right? Now, what those dimples do, it gives the ball more flight. It gives it more loft, and it allows it to fly further in the air, okay, without drag. So they wanted to figure out, okay, well, what is the precise number of dimples? How many dimples would be the optimum amount to have? And instead of just doing trial and error, they decided to input all the information that they had into a computer system and let the computer figure it out. Now, guess how many dimples the computer said? 432. 432, exactly. All right, continuing on with this theme, the total reign of the 10 antediluvian kings of Babylon was 432,000 years. The burial place of St. Barnabas was unknown until 432 years after his death. Don't know if that's actually accurate, but it looked good. According to the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the Satya Yuga is 1,728,000 years. The Treta Yuga, 1.296 million years. The Kali Yuga, 432,000 years, which are all multiples of the 432. And just because my slides all look the same, I decided to find this game thing here for the Vikings. It looked pretty neat. So we all know that the Viking place, where everybody goes when they die, all the Vikings go to Valhalla, which is the hall of the slain heroes, and is ruled by the king of the gods, Odin, which is called Asgard. The hall had 540 doors, through each of which 800 heroes could walk abreast. 540 times 800 equals 432,000. The Stradivarius violin was built to resonate at 432 hertz, which is, some say, is one of the most precise musical instruments man has ever built. Now, why would it be tuned to 432, not 440? And John, where's John? He's supposed to play a video for me. This is my Peter Van Maastricht. This is my piano tuner. When I finally did all these discoveries on the 432, I had him come out. Now, this guy has perfect pitch. He's brilliant. He makes clocks from hand. And he came out to tune my piano. But if John doesn't get out here, we won't listen to him play. Okay, well, maybe we can come back to him. Okay, so now, some of you might be wondering, well, how does all these frequencies, so the 432, the 216, the 864, how do these relate to the solfeggio frequencies? Now, just from sitting here for the whole day listening to Marco's work, you'll understand or see the significance of the 396, the 417, and the 528, even though they're not in the right order as Randy or some of the others have given. But I've got them over here. These are the Rodin family number groups, okay? So right here we got the X, Y, and the Z axes. We got the plus, 1, 7, and a 4. The negative is a 2, 8, and a 5. And of course, then we got the 3, 6, and 9, which is neither one of those. So I color code them so we wouldn't get confused. The 3, 6, and the 9 is there. 417 is there, and the 528. So these are the original, the solfeggio frequencies, for those of you who don't know. Originally, it was uncovered by Dr. Puello, I believe, in Len Horowitz's book. And it really kind of derives from the Bible. I think he got it from Psalms, but it was one of the outlawed frequencies that the monks in the chants, Gregorian chant, this is how they used to sing. So just how this relates to the 6 solfeggio frequencies and how it relates to Marco's family number groups. You got the 3, 6, and 9, 4, 17, and they repeat. So let's take the 2 reds here, 3, 9, 6. We go down 3 intervals, and then we got the 6, 3, 9. Okay, so basically the 3 shifts to the middle, the 6 comes to the front, and they all do that this way. They keep shifting to the right. 4, 1, 7. Okay, the 4 goes into the middle, 1 goes to the end, and 7 comes around. So all of the frequencies do that. Now, when I started to figure out, I did some multiplication or subtraction on these guys to figure out, okay, what is the relationship here with the 432? Because there's a huge contention out there. Well, 432 hertz, we saw all the data about the 432, but how does that relate to the solfeggio frequencies, which are the things that really are important? You know, doctors use 528 hertz to repair DNA. Well, when I subtracted the 639 and 396, I got 243, which is 432. It's shifted. The same for this family number group, right? I subtract them out, I get 4, 3, 2. Same thing here, 4, 3, 2, okay? So it's my contention that maybe the solfeggio frequencies, because they're based on Marco's work, or you see the harmonics or the family number groups of Marco's math in the solfeggios right in your face, the underlying principle, the underlying between the numbers seems to me to be the 432, which they're all shifted just like these are with Marco's work. So that's all I've really been able to come up with on how the solfeggios relate to the 432. Of course, you can add the digits together. You know, you get 9, 3, and 6, so you get the numbers actually add up to 9, which you guys have probably ad infinitum on that one. So now we're going to get to the work of Richard Merrick. This guy, I didn't discover him until, I don't know, maybe 30, 45 days ago. And for me, understanding the significance of the 432, which by now, have you guys understood the significance of the 432? Are we good with that? So I didn't really understand because I put the 432 in one of my coils in my signal generator, and I created some of the harmonics based on Pythagorean tuning. And I healed some people, but some people I didn't heal, and I didn't know why. So now when I discovered Richard Merrick's work, we're going to get a little bit more into the fundamental principles of matter. It really opened the door for me. It was huge in my understanding of what it is that I'm actually trying to do with this coil. So we're going to talk about a few things, the microcosm, mesocosm, which is the man, which is our bodies, and the macrocosm, which is just the planetary structures. And it was pretty interesting. This is the book I got from Richard. Talked to him on the phone a couple of times, and he gave me permission to use whatever I wanted of his work because he was just glad that somebody could use it. So his book here, Interference, a Grand Scientific Musical Theory. And the first thing we're going to come to is the microcosm. Now, Richard has been a musician pretty much most of his life. And he's come up with a very unique harmonic understanding of how matter works. In this first one here, we got Metatron's cube, Planck's cube, an imploding vacuum, imploding quanta, Coriolis torsion field. Now, if you guys were here listening to Greg Volt's presentation, you'll probably understand exactly what all that is, right? But essentially, what he's talking about, and now he's using harmonics here. You can't see it. You got yellow going in this way, red going out that way. So you got the z-axis and the x and the y-axis here. And I'll just sum it up in a nutshell. What Richard talks about is that you have the fundamental principle of space-time. The fundamental principle of the ether is undetectable, but it is an energy source nonetheless. It is everything and it is nothing. What Richard is saying is that how matter comes into being is through a harmonic distortion or harmonic interference of space-time, which causes ripples, okay? It causes movement. It causes little vortexes to happen. And it is on these harmonics, we also get the weak and strong nuclear force, atomic nucleus, particle packing, and he also has a unified harmonic torsion field theory, which unifies everything. All right, now we'll look at the mesocosm, which is really what I was primarily interested in, and it's the dipole harmonic field of the human body, okay? So what he says is that I'll get into that a little bit later, but what is going on here is basically the same harmonic interference pattern which causes the growth, causes regions, which we all know, well, maybe we don't know, about the cube, and the cube being the form of man and two spheres, okay? So what he's doing is actually unifying the understanding of the primal understanding of matter through harmonics and through geometry. And let's see, is it down here? He talks about vortex opening similar to the atomic model suggests harmonic field damping. Thank you. Yeah, that would be a good idea. So what he means by harmonic field damping, I'm going to get into that in just a minute. It is when you take, let's see, maybe I'll come back to that in a second. When you take this field here, now we know that this is a steel plate with beads on it, and you have these nodes. Now, let's say, for example, that all this space in here where there aren't any nodes, let's say that is space-time, all right? And space-time, of course, we know it's the higher vibration of God. It is the all-in-all, the unknowing, the unmanifested, and you dampen the frequency of God, is what he's essentially saying. You'll get these nodes, these harmonic nodes. That's what causes growth. It is the damping, it is the harmonic dampening that creates the interference pattern, which then creates these nodes that then become matter. All right, now this is just a real simple version of a standing wave. Now, if you have the ether was a standing wave and you had stacks of these opposite of each other, you wouldn't see anything unless you had another ripple come down, unless you had gods moving across the face of the waters creating the ripple, or you had consciousness, you had understanding. That's what creates matter. Further along in Richard Merrick's work, we go back, he actually uses the Pythagorean genera. Now, the genera means it's just three of these grouped together, the diatonic, the chromatic, and the enharmonic. And these are all scales based on the pentagram, or the phi ratio, okay? Now, for those of you who don't never studied the pentagram, now we're getting into really stuff. Now we're 666, now the pentagram. You guys must think I'm really evil, huh? But the interesting thing about the pentagram is that there's the phi ratio or the phi spiral or the golden mean built in it. Okay, so if we look at A here, all right, so we're looking at, these are musical notes, A and B and C and D, and how they relate to each other. These are the frequencies. Now, of course, one of the contentions I had with Richard is he's still using the 440 tuning. So all throughout his book, I had to suffer through that. But if we look at blue here, all right, which is the A, across the pentagram, this top bar of the pentagram, its phi ratio or relationship to B is this part of the pentagram, okay? And then, of course, you got the C and D, which the C is here, is in a phi relationship to the D. Everybody see that? So you see how in the pentagram, which is also a part of the circle of fifths. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get into that right now. Let's see. It might be a good time. Let's see what we got here. All right. Here's a dodecahedron with the pentagram in it, how the tetrachord or the perfect fourth, how they work and how they spread out based on the phi spiral. All right, and we get into a tritone. I might get into that if I have time, the significance of the tritone, but it's actually called the Diavolo de Musica by the church because it was actually outlawed. It's called the devil in the music. But if you ever listen to any of Beethoven's or who was the big one on the tritone? I believe it was it Chopin, that they once the church quit outlawing the tritone, it was everywhere. I think it was in the Middle Ages. It just exploded everywhere in music was the tritone. Now, why would the church outlaw something that we all love to listen to? Richard goes on further. He talks about these are the phi relationships here in the sphere. You know, or what Greg was talking about earlier with the sphere and the sine wave. And basically, this is like we go back to the torsion field. And now, this is a little goofy picture, but it's really interesting, and it really helped my work because Richard breaks down the harmonic sequence of the body and how it comes into being, how it grows. Now, a little bit later on, I'm going to show you how the fetus actually grows along a phi spiral that's recursive damped through harmonic frequencies. All right, so the spine, the harmonic spine is a 3-2, which is a perfect fifth. If you look back on your ratio from Pythagoras, you'll see that the 3-2 ratio is a perfect fifth. All right, so he basically describes how the body comes into being through the Vitruvian man here, and what exactly he's talking about through harmonic damping, harmonic frequencies in the phi ratio. This might not be a very good one to explain, but I'll get a little better explanation in just one second. All right, so here we got the 3-2 spine, the perfect fifth spine, and basically there's 2 octaves here. Now, if we look at this, this is the damping that he's talking about. This is the phi relationship damping, all right, which basically mimics the curve of the spine. But here's the golden section here, right? You have the red, and then you have the green. That's the golden mean, which cuts right across the heart section. And right through here, you have maximum resonance, and below that, you have maximum damping. Now, how many guys have ever heard that the scientists, they put out a new satellite in space to try to measure the cosmic microwave background? And they came back and said, well, the only way we can understand the weirdness of the cosmic microwave background, which is supposedly what is left over from the Big Bang, they say the universe has to be shaped like a dodecahedron. Have you guys heard about that yet? It came out about a month or so ago. So this is really something that was interesting because how could the universe be shaped like a dodecahedron if it's infinite? How could it even have a shape to it? But because of the cosmic microwave background, which supposedly, you know, I'm not a Big Bang theorist, but supposedly when the Big Bang took place, that it left all this radiation. Now, I have another theory about the Big Bang, but that's for another time. But if we look at this harmonic interference pattern, right, if you know a dodecahedron, this is a pentagram, or a pentagon, and in a dodecahedron, you've got the pentagrams or the pentagons make up the surface of the dodecahedron. So he's got a dodecahedron here inside of a 5-star circle, or a 5-star, and then inside of another pentagon again. He's listing all these harmonic nodes in here that all relate to the pentagram and the dodecahedron, and how it relates to the body is like as above, so below, right? Okay. Now this is the harmonic body, part of Richard's work. This picture came from him. And this was one of the things that really stood out for me. What he has here It's basically a graphical rendition of the fetus. And he mapped it. So you have the phi spiral that comes out this way, and you have the harmonic damping that takes place. So here's the phi here. And what he basically says is that every section of the body is in relation. The phi spiral is the controlling mean of the growth of the human body. But there are harmonic ratios that take place based on music throughout the different sections of the body. And that was one of the things that really made me look at why I was able to heal somebody with something and not somebody else, because they was on different portions of the body. I had to use different harmonics of the body. So the perfect fifth is rather than in the neck area, the perfect fourth, minor third, harmonic sixth, they're all in different areas of the body. So I had to use different ratios for the 432 depending on what part of the body. Now if we go back to that goofy picture, see, he even breaks that down for the different organs, the different parts of the body, the eyes. They all have different harmonic ratios. They all have different harmonic frequencies based on phi recursion and harmonic damping. And once I realized that was the key for me. This it put the picture all in place, so I could understand exactly why my coils were working and sometimes and why they weren't. So it was a huge coming. Richard Merrick's work was a huge boon for me. Okay, now this is talking about the damping and amplifying. Now this is a typical sine wave. You got one sine wave here and one here, but they're a little off from one another. Okay, they're just slightly off. And the bottom here is the resultant of the two. So you can see the little black dots go up, so you have the amplifying here, the interaction between the two, and then they come down here and they damp, almost nothing. And you have amplifying again. That is the ratio, that is the harmonics that he's talking about with the damping and amplifying effect. But everything comes from the unmanifested. All matter comes from the unmanifested through harmonic interference. Now, this is something that I wanted to talk to you guys about because it's an offshoot of the healing. But let's say, for example, that I'm right, or this theory is right, that all matter comes into creation through harmonics. And how that works is, in a nutshell, you have the fabric of space-time. You have an interference, you have a harmonic interference that takes place that causes the vortex to spin, okay? Causes the torsion field to start to move. And it's all based on music. It's all based on musical ratios. Now, if all matter is based on that, then you could take sound, you could take the proper harmonic ratios and dampen or amplify the effect of matter. Now, this is a stone wall that was built by our ancients thousands of years ago at Pumapunku. And as you can see, they almost look like they were molded out of clay and built in there, right? But this is solid stone, and supposedly it was cut with copper instruments. Now, I don't believe that. There's no way. This is hard stone. I forget if it's granite or not, but there's no way these guys could have built that. But what if they knew the proper harmonic codes? What if they knew the proper frequency? What if they knew the musical harmony that it would take to make matter more etheric, to make it lighter, to undo the vortex just enough that it becomes lighter, it becomes easier to move, it becomes easier to cut, it becomes easier to form? Then this makes sense, using just music. Because what did they have back then? They had musical instruments. That was basically it. You could use anything for a musical instrument, but they had flutes, they had stringed instruments, they had all kinds of things. And what if they knew the proper harmonic frequencies to build structures like this? Because some of the stuff I've seen, some of the research I've done, is stonemasons for 30, 50 years, they couldn't build that. It would be hard time even moving some of these things. I think that stone on the right, that big one, there was like over 20 or 30 tons. So if you understand how the fundamental principle of matter works, and the harmonic damping, harmonic ratios, the harmonic frequencies, the vortex action that takes place, then on the proper frequencies, you could essentially diminish the effect of matter. Does everybody like that idea? I mean, how do you think they got cut? Where were you, Johnny? You slept on me, man. I need you to play a video for me. Okay, now here's one of the things I wanted to talk about with Marco's work. And some of the ideas of the different geometry of the coil. I actually have one coil that's in a completely different geometry. I kind of base it on the Sri Yantra. But this is the magnetic field of the heart. This came from the heartmath.org. And they were able to map the magnetic field of the heart. And it's, lo and behold, the field is in the shape of a toroid. But the heart isn't. Now, this is one of the things that Marco and I have been kind of going back and forth on, is that I think, one of my theories is, I'm not really sticking to it too hard, but I think that Marco's work in the toroid and the math and the nested vortices is actually mapping the toroidal magnetic field and not actually mapping the hardware that needs to be built. Because all the hardware you guys have looked at today have all been built on a toroid with wires wrapped around a toroid. And what if that's not the case? What if it's something that actually produces a toroidal magnetic field? Like the heart. The heart isn't shaped like a toroid, but it produces a magnetic field a magnetic field that looks like a heart. So that's just more of the research we need to do on that. Now this is my latest coil design here. Where's my pointer? What this is, I call this the VESH 432, which is a vortex and electromagnetic sound healing. And what these are on the side here, these are fused quartz crystal glass. So they're pure quartz. They are man-made. They're not natural. It's kind of hard to find tubes or rods that would be natural like that. And the base that they're cut in is acacia wood. And I've got two circuits running. One runs this way, one runs the other way, right? They're running opposite of each other. And mounted in the middle is an 1.25" sphere magnet mounted on a spring, so it vibrates. And off to the side here, John, you got, do you show that? That would probably be better. Huh? Okay. So you can see the angle of these here are actually at 19.5 degrees, so they go out a little bit. And here's my hookup for my stereo system, right, where I pump in the sounds, the frequencies. So this is just one of the coils. This is what I call the tabletop model because, yeah, see how the magnet just comes right off? It's mounted on a spring. And you can see here, now this is what I call nested vortices, how all these wires come together. They're not wrapped like this coil is, but they're actually wrapped in a geometric shape that created all these nested vortices. And it gives off an interesting, matter of fact, one of the first persons I showed this to when I built it, it wasn't even energized. It had no music going into it. I had no frequencies going into it whatsoever. I held it up to the person and she was like, whoa, that's really strong. What do you got in that thing? And well, of course, I'm in Sedona. Everybody does spiritual work, so they're all sensitive. But it was pretty interesting that somebody would feel something like that off of something that I built and it's not even energized. My most popular thing here, this is what I use mostly on people, is the black coil, which is essentially this coil here, which I overlap. Instead of everybody's going in the same direction, I actually do one circuit going one way and then I overlap them coming back. So I get the two circuits overlap each other and kind of play on each other. So this black coil here, that's just a quick connect. So I have everything hooked up. I just connect it real quick. Mounted in the middle here is another sphere magnet, but it's 1 inch instead of 1.25" like this one. But it's in a plastic ball. I took a little plastic, I think it was an 1.25" polypropylene ball, cut it in half, put the magnet in there. Polypropylene is easily heat welded, so I welded it back together using heat. Actually, I put it on a pan on the stove and melted it and put it together real quick. And then I drilled a hole in the top of it and inserted the ferrofluid. Now, I'm sure you guys all understand what ferrofluid is, which is essentially nano-sized iron particles covered in a suffocant and immersed in an oil or any kind of a fluid body that actually mimics the magnetic field a lot better. Have you guys all seen what ferrofluid looks like? It creates this beautiful flower when you get it when you get it magnetized. So that's what's in the center of this thing is ferrofluid, so it allows it to move and spin and it centers itself. And that's basically what the two coils are, this one here and this one here, of my VESH device. Now, hopefully, you're still here. We can maybe get to a video in a second. Go ahead and put up the... Okay. No.
Well, use your toggle over to the video.
Okay, hold on. I want to explain this real quick, this geometry. All right.
Gotta get back to this.
I have a mouse on this thing?
That switch on the top will toggle between the,
Okay.
top switch will change over to the video.
Okay.
Push the top button.
Okay. Okay. So what this is this is the an AutoCAD geometry of the coil. And what I use are 29 pegs going around. I can use any multiple of 3 minus 1. And what that does, when I go around 10 pegs, brings me to here, going around 10 more pegs brings me to here, 10 more pegs brings me one more past my starting point. Okay, so what that does is it gives me a triangle, but it gives me a differential triangle. It's not a perfect triangle. And so this originally was when I first had that dream about the triantra and all the different triangles. Now, you know the triantra has 5 triangles down, 4 up, 5 and 4 is 9. There's a differential there between the two. So this is originally where I got the idea for triangles. So if you look back at the device, these are all triangles rotated around each other a bunch of times. Okay? And that's the massager coil, which you saw. And this is my buddy David Shreda. I had a bunch of testimonies from people who I have healed. I didn't know how much time I was going to have, how much data space, because my videos are pretty large. So I only did one. I only decided to do David Shreda's testimony because there's 2 things here in this one video that I want to discuss when he's done, which is very important. Do David's. No, that's the other one. That's the one with my piano tuner. We can play that one too at the end. No, let's go ahead and do David's, and we can do the piano tuner if we got time.
I apologize, having a bit of a challenge here.
Oh, since we're waiting, you guys seen the new Bud Light bottle with the vortex top? Yeah. Does that thing work, do you think? I mean, what's the point of the vortex in beer? I mean, I understand the beer, but... Well, I bought one today.
Sorry about that, we're having a challenge here.
While we're waiting, you guys, anybody have any questions? Might as well go knock some of those out. Go ahead, yeah. Oh, it was 19.5 degrees. But yeah. Yeah. Oh, wait. Might as well go ahead and just play this. This is in my music studio and shop. And this is my piano tuner. He just finished tuning it to the 432. It took him about 2 hours to do it because you have to, when you're down tuning, it takes a while. You have to do it in sections. Turn it up so they can hear it. This is 432. That jingling is my dog in the background. So if you guys live in Sedona and want your piano tuned to 432, he's the guy for it. He did a fantastic job, and I really respect his opinion because he's got perfect pitch. He's been tuning pianos all his life. He builds clocks. He's a brilliant, brilliant man. So, John, yeah, you ready?
So my name is David Sarita, and firstly, I'm just amazed at Jamie's level of genius and what he's doing with the toroid and the over-unity effect that's happening with these things and the math. It's incredible. And I'm a person who believes in the field affecting matter, the body, or the field, the energy field, or invisible magnetic fields, or plasma fields, or even etheric fields, interfacing with matter to produce over-unity in electrical devices, but also in the body, because we have an aura. I mean, Fritz Albert Popp, the German scientist, proved that all living things are emitting biophotons in invisible and visible spectra of light. So we are emitting light. And if you have an injury in the body and you use an etheric device or a vibrational device that can actually affect your field, the body should follow. Einstein said the field is the sole governing agency of the particle matter. So the field tells matter what to do. Matter doesn't tell the field what to do. So Jamie's device, when we put it on my foot, and my foot I had a 2-inch splinter very thick went through my foot, and I had a lot of swelling for about 3 years, and I thought I was going to need foot surgery. And for the first time in about a year, it swelled up again really bad. And so we put the device, and you could feel the kind of humming and the vibration. We put it on my foot, and the next day the swelling went way, way down. And I thought that was pretty amazing, because normally when I get these swelling attacks in my foot, and they're really bad, it's red and purple, it can take over a week for the swelling to go down. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then we tried putting it on my heart, and I actually have a lot of emotional pain about how many injuries I've had. I mean, I'm an extreme skier, a skydiver, I was a tree planter for 22 years, and I never hurt myself badly, but the drivers in Los Angeles, forget about it. I got hit a number of times by, usually women with no insurance, and got really messed up. I was on crutches for 6 months from a slip disc. And then when I was just healing over one of these car accidents, I was just getting ready to start exercising again, and I was skiing in my socks across the hardwood floors on New Year's Day with my New Year's resolution, and this 2-inch splinter went through my foot. So there's a lot of emotional pain around the fact that I was getting hurt so much in the house. So stay out of the house. The worst injuries I've ever had in my life are at home, so the key is to get out of the house. But anyway, I felt that pain. The emotional part of the injury came up for me when I put this device on. And, I'm a very sensitive person. I meditate a lot, but I'm not one of those wounded sensitive types that always, kind of wicks my wounds over and over and over again. I'm the kind of guy who, because I'm a mountain person, and I just get up and go again. So for me to have an emotional feeling in relationship to a device is pretty profound.
Now, what Dave was talking about with the emotional thing is I put not only I put the right frequencies on his foot, but I also put the heart chakra on his heart. And what that did was it drew out the emotional pain that was causing all that swelling. Because remember, he said he had swelling in his foot for over 3 years. It wouldn't go away. He thought he was going to have surgery. It kept coming back up. So when I put the heart chakra, the proper heart frequency, which is, I'll tell you about it in just a second. Once I put the proper frequencies for the heart chakra on his heart, it drew out. He could feel that grief coming out of his heart, which coming out of his body, coming out where it stores. Because every one of us, and when I talk about doing spiritual work, every one of us that has suffered anything in our past, whether it's in our childhood, whether it's an emotional trauma, psychological trauma, if we don't let it go, and mostly as kids we don't understand it, it gets stored somewhere in the body as a density, as something that's inharmonic or disharmonious to the natural vibration that's in our body. So that gets stored there. So a lot of spiritual teachers work through people, work through patients, and to try and recreate the trauma and bring it out through crying or yelling or some kind of way, some kind of a release of that emotional pain. That usually cures, all ailments, I'm convinced, that happen within the body are all related to trauma, are all related to disharmonious vibration or things that are causing a density that's causing the matter in our cells to not wobble or to not spin properly. So when I put the heart chakra frequencies on his heart, that drew that out. So I worked in combination with the proper healing, with the proper frequencies that relate to the foot, and also the heart chakra to really heal this. And this was, I don't know how long ago was that? 5, 6 months ago, maybe 5 months ago, and he hasn't had a problem since. Now he was looking at having to go get surgery, and it's completely gone, completely healed. It went away the next day. So one of the things that I've experienced with some of the other people that I work with in Sedona, of course, I'm in Sedona. I have a lot of spiritual friends. One of the things that I noticed is that the people that do spiritual work, that have done spiritual work, clearing, all these densities out from all these childhood traumas, all these experiences that we had, the people who have cleared these experiences are able to heal a lot quicker than, say, like my family. All right, because I went to see my family the other last week, and none of these guys know anything about what I'm doing. They're not spiritual whatsoever. They're all working and having kids and doing their whole thing. They don't know whatever you're doing. That's fine. Hey, just stay over there. All right. So I tried my coil on some of the members of my family. Let's try it out. My brother he ran a marathon, and he had his foot. He was limping around. I said, let's try it on your foot. So I did all the different figures. Normally it only takes 20 minutes. I worked 20 minutes with David Sarita. That was it. I worked like over an hour on my brother. Next day he woke up worse. I was like, dude, you need to get some spiritual help, man. But unfortunately, because I'm family, I don't qualify for that because they need to pick on my kids. So how spiritual could I be, right? So one of the things that's one of the things I did realize about this coil is that the more spiritual work, the less dense, the more closer you are to being in perfect health, the more it works. Now, that doesn't mean to say that somebody else who, like my brother, for example, wouldn't be able to experience healing, but it would take more sessions. I worked with David one time, and that's all he needed. But somebody like my brother would probably need, a day or maybe 1 week on the coil, certain frequencies, drawing out whatever it is, working on the densities that he's accumulated throughout all these years that have never been released. So I think one of the primary the primary practitioners that I would be working with this coil would have to train to understand all the different harmonic frequencies, all the different harmonic sections of the body, and also be able to work with work with their patients on an emotional level to really understand the fundamental principle of trauma and how that gets stored in the body. So there really needs to be that give and take. One of the other things that I realize in all this work, like I said, I've been doing spiritual work for over 15 years, is that I believe that in order to, I have a book that I wrote. It's called The Pre-Secret, and it's available on Amazon.com. And the reason why I wrote it, the reason why I called it The Pre-Secret is because, you guys ever heard of The Secret, right? That the video and the whole thing, right? Law of attraction, what you focus on, what you think about, you manifest. The reason why I wrote that book, it's about getting an energetic balance. It's a very thin workbook, and it is the practices that help me open up my heart chakra, help me to understand some of the finer principles of life, of matter, of God, of balance. And the reason why I feel that us as a technical society and the inventions that we're working on has to go hand in hand with the spiritual development. I mean, I think we've all learned from Atlantis, and I think the guardians that are around us are saying, hey, we're not going to do that this time around. Okay, so I really firmly believe that in order to progress, in order to really develop the technologies that we need to continue forward, it has to go hand in hand with our spiritual development, with our understanding, because otherwise, we come up with something, we're just going to out of anger, destroy everybody with it, destroy our friends. Is this going to take us backwards? We're not going to go forward, we're going to regress. So this is why seems like it's taking so long to really get these technologies. I know Marco's been working on this stuff for over 30 years. Now here we are, we got a whole Saturday developed to it. Now 30 years, now we have a whole Saturday to it. So I think this is fantastic. We're still moving, but we have to look into the spiritual aspect of what it is that we're developing. Because I know that I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a physicist, I'm an electrical engineer. I've only been working on this for this presentation, and the information that's here, I've only known for about maybe 5 months, and most of it within the last 45 to 60 days. So I know that when I focus on something, things start to happen. Information comes my way, people come my way, and things move. And I think that if we start to take a more spiritual approach, because I did a lot of biblical, a lot of religious things in here with the Bible and consciousness, and I think if we really start to understand, take the teaching of the ancients and what they were talking about those thousands of years ago and put it towards spiritual understanding, then I think we could draw ourselves together more and more to a more rapid acceleration of understanding the technology that we all want to bring in so much, we all want to bring in to help heal this planet. So I think with that said, I'll conclude for now and open up to any questions. John, you ready with the mic? John, hello. Questions. We're going to do questions. You want to do the mic, or do you want me to just... So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here.